So at Sangha Night, just 2 weeks ago, we were in a series about the Wheel of Life, you might remember. We were talking about the spiral, the Wheel of Life, the spiral and the goal. And just 2 weeks ago, we had that great talk from Vidya Varchin. And it's amazing to think that that was just 2 weeks ago, and to think of all the many realms of that Wheel of Life that I've been through in those last 2 weeks. So this talk that I'm going to give, it responds to the times we're in. And I also think it fits into the series, actually, because I'm going to talk about the qualities of the Buddha, the goal of the path. And Vidanya has been working on a new series of talks, which are directly responding, how the Dharma can help us respond in times of difficulty. And we'll publicise what those talks are quite soon. So hopefully this is going to be the start of a Sangha night that we'll run every Tuesday night for the time being. So my talk tonight is Wisdom and Love in the Time of Bardo. Wisdom and Love in the Time of Bardo. So some thoughts of how the Buddha's teachings have been helpful for me in responding in these unprecedented times that we find ourselves in. This lockdown that we're in now. Great that somebody's joined us from France, actually. I love the fact that we're all up in our houses, but there's somebody from France taking part in it. So that's really great. So I really feel like we are in a Bardo, which is a Tibetan Buddhism idea, which I'm sure you've come across. A Bardo is a time of transition. Often it was talked about as the time after death, but it can also be other times of our lives when we're in transition. A time where we don't know where we're going, actually. A time where things might be difficult and challenging, but also in Tibetan Buddhism, a time of potential enlightenment, a time where we can really transform and become enlightened. So this is a time, this time of challenge, this time of Bardo, where we could be really using this time to transform ourselves and therefore contribute to creating, transforming the world, being kinder, wiser people who can help in the world more. So last night, after we'd had the announcement in the UK about we were now in our houses for the next 3 weeks, I found myself waking up at about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I realised I wasn't going to get back to sleep. So I went and got a cup of tea, and I went out into our garden and had a little kind of wander about, and then poked my head out into the street. And our house looks out over quite a lot of other houses. So I was amazed to see that there was quite a few lights on upstairs in other people's houses, quite a few. And I think quite a lot of those, you know, they weren't just bathroom lights, they were people who were awake and had turned the light on. And it was really interesting to feel that kind of sense of connection to these people. My speculation was that they're people who are, you know, they were awake too and able to sleep in this time of uncertainty. And they might have been worrying about their relatives or about their finances or just what's going to happen next. But it was really connecting to see those lights in the darkness. And it was also really beautiful because after a little while, the birds started to sing. So the early bird song just started. So there's something very touching about that. And when I was out there, I was thinking about, well, how many of us are experiencing anxiety and fear about the next few weeks, about the future for ourselves and for people we know, for people we don't know, for the world. And I was thinking about what qualities of the Buddha, the one who is awake to reality, what are particularly helpful just now. And I've just chosen 2 qualities to talk about today. So one is the Buddha's wisdom, and the other is the Buddha's love, which is expressed, his metta, his love, which is expressed in his kindness. So I'm going to start by talking about his wisdom. So the Buddha saw things as they really are. He saw reality. Unenlightened beings like me, we see through lenses or veils that are of our craving, our aversion, and our delusion. So we want things to be permanent, and we get sad or angry when they're not permanent. We kind of go about our lives as if we're separate from others, not recognizing that we're part of a great interconnected web of life. We think that happiness comes from lots of experiences and things, rather than realizing there's a deeper kind of happiness. So these might be familiar to you. You might be remembering from the newcomers course on the very first night where we talked about these 3 lakshanas, as they're called, the way that the Buddha said that things are. So the 3 lakshanas are, first of all, impermanence. They're impermanence, insubstantiality, and dukkha. So impermanence. Well, I've certainly had a really strong experience of impermanence this last week or so, because things have just been changing all the time. So 2 weeks ago, we were at Sangha night, and now here we are on Zoom in our houses, taking part in this Sangha night. These rapid changes to people's livelihoods, people's living situations, their daily activities. So it's a bit like I really can contact impermanence. This is an opportunity for us to really know impermanence in our guts, not just in our heads. Insubstantiality, so that's that nothing has an inherent permanent existence. And it's kind of really interesting that so many of the things I just thought were kind of about life was like that, well, they're not anymore. I mean, in one of those is, it's amazing that I find myself basically under house arrest, and I think it's a really good thing. You know, it's quite amazing. And the third is dukkha. Dukkha is suffering, unsatisfactoriness. So there is so much suffering about at the moment, from the huge suffering of those who have the virus, their relatives, those who have lost their jobs, vulnerable people, to those small dukkha moments that you might be experiencing as well. It's like, I can't go to the centre, I really want to go to the centre, I can't get my hair cut. In really small things, but they just bring it home. We've run out of bananas, but we will get some tomorrow, so that's all right. So just these kind of like little things that remind me of a dissatisfaction, but also a much stronger sense of just, this shouldn't be happening. It's just an anger almost, a kind of, this really shouldn't be happening, and a grief for some of the things that we've lost. It's been, you know, in the centre, when I was there last week before we self-isolated, it was just really sad to have an empty centre and not see everybody there. There was a kind of grief and loss in that. All the plans that we'd made that aren't going to happen, you know, there's just a grief for us all. Now, some of that suffering we can do something about. So we can look after people in practical ways. We can keep in touch with isolated people. We can make sure people have enough money to live off if we can help. But a lot of my suffering has been because of my mental states and my attitudes. So this is my arguing with reality, because there is actually no security. Everything is permanent, is impermanent, and I don't like it. And the trouble is that reality always wins when I argue with it. So this dukkha that I'm experiencing could be a massive wake-up call for me. So in a way, it's really helping me to acknowledge the first noble truth. There is suffering, there is dukkha. And then to look at the fact that the Buddha said, there is a way out, the Noble Eightfold Path, and to live that path in all its aspects of my life. So resolutely, joyfully, to put to practice all those stages of the path. I can also see faith arising in me as people around me who've been practicing for years, or practicing, maybe not for years, but just been practicing intensely for a while. I can see how actually they're experiencing a little bit less anxiety, a little bit less denial than other people. Or if they are experiencing it, they're able to be aware of it and to respond to it. And I've been really, it's great to see Amoghavansara is at Sangha night tonight, because I really enjoyed a video that Edward has made, which is Tea with Amoghavansara, which you hopefully will have on the website in a couple of days. So it's just lovely to see Amoghavansara really relaxed, having a cup of tea in the garden. I found that really inspiring, actually. So this could be an opportunity for us to know more deeply the truth of the 3 lakshanas, and to free ourselves from the delusion that somewhere we will find security in this world, in this conditioned world. We can also benefit from the wisdom of the Buddha in terms of the law of conditioned co-production, which was discussed in the talks a few weeks ago. And so in brief, everything arises dependent on conditions and then passes away when those conditions change. So because everything is impermanent and changing, we can work with conditionality to transform ourselves to how we'd like to be able to live more in line with the precepts, in line with our values. Every time that in these difficult conditions, we choose to be kind, we choose to be generous, we choose awareness, we are setting up conditions for that to be our more natural, habitual response the next time we're in that situation. And bearing conditionality in mind also helps us to understand why we find ourselves and we see other people behaving in unhelpful and unskillful ways that have been conditioned by our past experience. So it doesn't kind of excuse greed, selfishness, etc., but it does explain it. It gives us basically people, you know, we have been conditioned in the past to act in various ways, selfish ways. And what we do when we find ourselves in difficult situations is, well, we tend to do more of that. And I think because we can see that in ourselves and we can see it in other people, it gives us room not to blame. Freedom from blame. Freedom from blame is a really attractive idea to me. It's completely natural if something is unpleasant in our experience, we want to blame either ourselves or others or both. But actually what's happening is just the consequences of many conditions. Blame will just cause us more suffering if we go down that line. So we can do the best we can at the moment to stay in the gap and choose a creative response. This isn't easy. It's not easy when we're swamped by fear, anxiety, anger, other strong emotions. And there's lots of times we might not succeed. But we can look back at how we've behaved, responded, and then make a resolution to stay in the gap and to respond creatively next time. So with no self-blame, but just kind of next time, let's try and take a more creative response. And we can look for prapancha. So prapancha is when our thoughts go completely crazy and give us a hard time, when we find ourselves thinking the same thoughts again and again. And those thoughts can make us anxious, can make us suffer. And what we can do, I think, when we're experiencing prapancha, is we can bring ourselves back into our actual experience in our bodies. What's our breathing like? What's going on for us right now? And let go of the thoughts as much as we can. These are just thoughts. We don't have to believe them. I've spent quite a lot of time these last week or so in speculation, and actually it's not very helpful, because things at the moment are totally outside my control. All I control is my response, how I respond to things. So I thought of a few things that help us to practice the wisdom of the Buddha, a few conditions we can put in place. So one is rationing the news and social media. So we might want to choose to watch the news every day or hear the news every day. We might want to check our social media sometimes, but maybe we can give ourselves gaps when we're not doing that, so that we can just let go of that. Second is more time in nature if we can. So not everybody has a garden, but I think there's been something, in fact, in our community, there's been masses of gardening going on, which has been fantastic. And there's something about just working in the earth or being in nature, looking at spring just arising, which is really, just really grounding, of course. There's friendship. We can talk to people on the phone, send them cards by post, maybe Skype them, Zoom them. We can connect with people even if we can't be with people. And of course we can meditate or sit quietly and reflect. So we can try and have a meditation practice in our lives. Or if we already meditate, we could maybe meditate a little bit more. So there's some wisdom. So the Buddha had this very, perhaps a different perspective from us, which allowed him to have a wisdom. And he was also really celebrated for his compassion, his love, his metta, and his kindness. He expressed that in his kindness. So I'm looking now at the Buddha's kindness. So first of all, we can be kind to ourselves. So I think we've all gone through objectively this huge, massive trauma this last week. Things have been changing so fast. And that's going to have an effect on us. For some of us, like past trauma might be triggered, past anxieties might be triggered. And what we can do is bring kindness to this as much as we can, gentleness to this. We might find that we're experiencing and expressing to others emotions like anxiety, stress, irritation, ones that we don't want to. They don't live up to our aspirations. But again, we can just be kind to ourselves whilst doing what we can not to do it again. And of course, other people are going to be acting from anxiety as well, from fear. And so we can just, I think, really try and forgive other people, bring kindness to other people. So it's a bit like, it's kind of, for me, it's like meta, 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 as much as we can, as much meta. We're all trying our best in some way. So I've just got a few thoughts on how best to set up the conditions for meta and positive emotion. Because we need to be well nourished in ourselves, in as positive state ourselves as we can be, if we're going to be of help to anybody else or of help to ourselves. And you might have a bit of an unhelpful guilt about that, about being in positive mental states when there's so much suffering and difficulty going on in the world. And if you're a person who does experience that, you could just ask yourself some questions. So do you make better decisions when you're sad, anxious, confused, or when you're calm and happy? Would you rather be around somebody who is sad, anxious, confused, or with somebody who is calm, happy, loving, has clarity, is relaxed? So there's something about, if we can ourselves be in good mental states, that's really helpful for us and for other people. It's like, you know, being part of the solution, not part of the problem, as much as we can be. So a few things that we might do to be in more positive mental states. So a really big one for me is gratitude and appreciation. And I've been hearing loads of gratitude and appreciation from people, really grateful for the conditions that we do have. So we might, if we have a roof over our heads, if we have enough to eat, the people that we know, the support we're getting from the people, the Dharma, the Sangha, all these kind of things that we are grateful for. And hopefully you'll have lots of other things as well that you're grateful for. And I really recommend writing it down and perhaps doing the gratitude exercise that we do on the intermediate course, which maybe the people who are new to Sangha might not have done yet, actually. But basically, they have done it. Mokhtara has given me a thumbs up, so they have done it. That's great. So, yeah, so doing the gratitude exercise again, maybe, or maybe every night, just writing down 3 things that you've happened in the day that you've really appreciated, that you can be grateful for, that you've benefited from. So the gratitude's the first one. The second is beauty, connecting with beauty. So enjoying things that are beautiful. So the spring, all the flowers coming out, the sunshine, the bird song, maybe looking at art. It's been great to see Gaurav has been posting on Facebook a few of his beautiful paintings, so we can see those. Listening to beautiful music, watching films, etc., reading books. And maybe also just enjoying the altruism of so many people. So this wonderful urge to help and benefit others that hopefully you've all experienced, the, you know, the street groups and the neighbourhood groups that are setting up to help other people, the people who are working in the NHS for us, the people, other essential workers who are working really hard for us to make sure. And I've just received loads of kindness from all sorts of different people over these last few days. I keep getting emails offering me free things. It's like, you know, there's a lot of kindness going on at the moment. And there's something very beautiful in that, which leads on to my next point, which is generosity. So I think generosity is a great way, like when I'm getting really self-obsessed and worried, if I'm generous, it brings me out like nothing else does. And to be on the receiving end of generosity is just delightful as well. There's been a lot of it in our community and I've really enjoyed it. So we can be generous to ourselves, we can be generous to somebody else. There's a teacher in Triratna called Vidyamala, and she has a gesture which I really like. So the gesture of generosity is the open palm, and the generosity and the gesture of when we're feeling tight is the closed palm. And I think there's something really strong in that image. Sometimes we feel really tight, but if we could just open our palm and give, there's a real difference in the energy that we can experience. So generosity, the magic of generosity. The next one is forgiveness, which I've mentioned a little bit already. So forgiving others, forgiving ourselves, knowing that we're doing things perhaps sometimes from a place of fear and other people are. And actually, if we're all going to be in lockdown with our people we live with for the next whatever long it is, we're going to have to all get pretty good at forgiveness. So, yeah. And then bringing to mind, my last one in this is no, my second to last one is bringing to mind figures that represent the Enlightenment experience. So the Buddha, or any of that other amazing array of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that have come from the Buddha's Enlightenment experience and express his qualities. So I don't know if you can see, but on my screen there, I've got green Tara. So yeah, green Tara is up here. So she's really strong for me at the moment. I think it's the fact that she sits in one leg in meditation and one leg active in the world. So there's the balance of nourishing herself through meditation, getting in touch with the bigger picture, the transcendental, and also being active in the world. And also she is, of course, she's green, she represents nature. So there's something about that kind of very nourishing aspect of green Tara. And I suppose with these figures, there might be something about, well, we could maybe let them love us. We could be receptive to what it would be like to receive the love of one of these figures. Okay. I must have said we need to do the metta bhavana. Wow, anyway, I haven't written it down, but of course what we need to do is practice metta, is do the metta bhavana. So do the metta bhavana every day if we can. Padmavajra gave a great talk that's online, and he said how at Padmaloka Retreat Centre, they're doing the metta bhavana every day. And I just think practicing metta is so powerful. And we can do metta off the cushion as well. We can practice meeting whatever happens in ourselves and in others with metta, with loving kindness. Okay, so I'm just coming to the end. I've talked about how the Buddha's wisdom and love can be helpful in difficult times. And interesting, actually, it's useful in easy times as well. It's not like what I've talked about today is anything different. And I think that's really interesting that the Dharma applies whatever our conditions are. So turning towards the Buddha, to the Buddha's wisdom and his love, like this, we could call it going for refuge to the Buddha. So going for refuge to the Buddha who is enlightened, to his teaching, which is the Dharma, and to the community that practices his teaching, which is the Sangha. And the defining act of being a Buddhist is this going for refuge. And I think it's interesting that in challenging times, it becomes really clear where we go for refuge, what we want to go for refuge to. You know, where do we seek our refuge? And that's a question we could ask ourselves, I suppose. And in order to kind of just explore very, very quickly what it means to go for refuge, there are some phrases from the dedication ceremony that I'm just really resonate for me at the moment. And the dedication ceremony is something that we do before retreats quite often, or maybe for a day's event or something like that. It's about dedicating our practice for the well-being of all beings. So there's 3 lines in the dedication ceremony that are, may our mind become Buddha, may our thought become Dharma. May our communication with one another be Sangha. So the first one, may our mind become Buddha. So what would it be like to have the mind of a Buddha? Calm, full of energy, love, no tensions or inner conflict, free of self-absorption. So I think, and you probably have other qualities as well. So you could, to reflect on the qualities of the Buddha's mind, I think can actually open up states of mind that are quite freeing for us. It can be really helpful. So what we could be doing maybe is reading the life story of the Buddha, meditating on the Buddha, listening to talks about the Buddha, just really bringing his qualities to mind. So the next one is, may our thoughts become Dharma. So for me, this is about viewing our lives through Dharma eyes. So reflecting on the dukkha in our experience, the impermanence in our experience, noticing how we feel when we're generous or when we're not generous, feeling when we're contracted or when we're tight, reflecting on our experience in the light of the Dharma. And I think it's really important to do that now, because let's hope things do get a lot better and we might lose the intensity actually. There's something about, wow, this is pretty intense, to really reflect on the Dharma in our lives now. And the third one is, may our communication with one another be Sangha. So we don't have a building that we can all meet in. The building's still there, but we can't meet in it. But anyway, we are still a Sangha. And so let's just keep communicating from truth, from kindness, from awareness, from metta, and let our communication be Sangha. And it's been really fantastic and moving, the response that has come from the Sangha, offering help, offering practical help, responding with lots of kindness and generosity to the other people in the Sangha. And it'd be great to just keep this going so that when we finally come back together in the building, we're an even stronger Sangha. So I'm just going to finish by just wishing for all of us in this time of Bardo that may our mind become Buddha, may our thought become Dharma, may our communication with one another be Sangha. Okay.